Every scar tells a tale untold. Every breath makes the night grow cold. The hunter's heart and the prey's last rhyme all collide in the world of true crime. Truth is lurking in the lies they feed. Justice waits for those who breathe. Through the dark we'll trace the line. Welcome to the world of true crime.
And good evening, everyone. And thank you for joining us to watch or listen to True Crime with a Twist. And it's one hell of a twist tonight, everyone. And we are on UFO, Paranormal, and United Public Radio Network, broadcasting to you on 105.3 FM out of Mississippi and along the Gulf Coast at 107.7 FM out of the city of New Orleans in Louisiana. So I'm your host, Beverli Rhodes, and tonight we have two wonderful guests. We have the Selma and we have Tia, and they've both had a look at our serial killer. So we're going to be asking the question, was the vampire of Sacramento, Richard Chase, possessed, or was there something else going on with him? And I'm welcoming both of my guests tonight, and we will have them onto the screen show. And for those of you listening, we're going to have some amazing pictures and drawings and images that have been prepared by the guests, and they will walk through and talk through all their findings. How the show rolls is that we have an overview from each of the guests. They will go through their images and go and talk through where their findings are, how they did it. And then at the end of each of those, they will each offer a summation. Once those summations are finished, I will, as your host, go through those summations and make some sort of assumptions and come up with a conclusion. Then you at home can decide. You want to do your own investigation? Go for it. But this is True Crime with a Twist, because we're looking at things like astrology, psychic side, soul plans, remote viewing. What was the person doing before the person created and did all these awful, awful crimes? So before we move on, I'm going to share with you a little bit of information about our perpetrator. So perpetrator is Richard Chase, who's also known as the Vampire of Sacramento. And he had a very unusual beginning and a very difficult life. He was born 23rd of May, 1950, and he was sent across to the other side December 26, 1980. He is an American serial killer, a cannibal, and a necrophile who had killed 6 and then took his own life in prison with an overdose of depression medication, which he was squirreling away because he took 36 times the normal dose after secretly hoarding. He became a squirrel all of his own. Allegedly, there was a paper with drawn squares found showing codes and sigils. He killed across Sacramento, California in a reign of terror, spanning December 1977 through January 1978. Did all of that in like almost just a year. Unreal. The first victim was a drive-by shooting. The second, a pregnant woman who he shot 3 times. He stabbed her in her stomach, and the fetus then undertook necrophilia, drinking her blood after removing a nipple. He placed dog poop from her own yard and placed it in her throat, guys. I mean, this is just horrific. And I've got a graphic warning here. If this triggers you in any way, please, perhaps wait for a bit and listen a little bit later, because there's only a little bit left. Then later, he killed a 22-month-old person and a child. He bathed in the blood, and then he blacked out. Remember that, everyone. He blacked out. This is key. He ate the baby's brain and then removed multiple organs. Following his blood fixation, he was nicknamed the Vampire of Sacramento because he drank the victim's blood and cannibalized their remains. He first started with rabbits, then small animals, believing that the ritual would cure his illness as well as his impotency. So this is the person that we are looking at today. This is where we are going with him, and we will then, start with reviewing what was his soul plan. So I'm going to hand over to Tia. Tia does a lot of soul planning. So Tia, please, welcome to the show. Could you give us a little bit of a quick rundown on what is a soul plan and what are you looking at, and how did you look at this vampire of Sacramento, please? Over to you.
Certainly. Hi, Beverli. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me on the show. So this is a very brief introduction. It's a lot more involved than this if I do a full soul plan and activation. But as the gentleman isn't with us anymore, this has just been a reading and a meditation that I've actually done on our perpetrator today. So soul plan readings are rooted in the ancient Hebrew gematria system, and that's around assigning numbers to a word or a phrase where the energy, vibrations of the words or phrases bear in relation to each other, and they give qualities above and beyond the mere letters, and these qualities apply to the person's age. So in the last century, there was an amazing visionary called Frank Alper, and he channeled the gematria, which is the star of creation, which we can see in many cultures and religions. I mean, the typical name for that is the Star of David. That's what you would know it as. So, and that is the foundation of soul planning. However, moving forward, today there's a gentleman, Blue Marsden, and he's of the Holistic Healing College. He did extra channeling, extended some numerology into this, and added to the original method. And that is now relevant to our current evolution and to ascension, and to look at individuals today who are really interested in what their soul destiny was before we decided to come to Earth School. So today I'm not going to do a full reading, like I said before, but I will be mapping across Richard's agreed soul plan to any key relevant points in his life. Some of the points that Beverli has gone through, I will go into in a little bit more depth as far as his soul plan is concerned. So I hope that, sorry, we're just going to take a drink there, Beverli. Sorry about that.
I was about to take a drink.
Timing is everything.
Talk about being caught on the hop here. Thank you so much, Tia. So can you give us an overview, please, Tia, on what is the situation? What did you find? What were you looking for? What do you look for when you start looking at a person like this as the Vampire of Sacramento? What was your key areas? What do you use? Do you always use the same thing? Is it always the date of birth? Is it, is it the name? Is it the full name? Explain to us and our listeners who are on the radio with us. Welcome, listeners, and all our viewers, and of course our special individuals in the chat sending us messages.
Certainly. So the soul plan isn't about date of births. It's more about the birth name that you were given. So if you were given a name Richard John Jones, that is the name that we would actually use in the soul plan. And it's very funny because sometimes I get individuals that come and see me and they say, oh no, well my name was Christina Johnson. My name is Christina Johnson, but actually on my birth certificate they've just put Tina Johnson. And that is key, because when we chose to come down to Earth School and complete our soul plan, it's our parents that actually physically write our destiny, or it is the individual that has charge of you at that time. So it is what is on your birth certificate is absolutely key to where your soul destiny is going to go. So if we rename ourselves, that does have an impact later on, but then that is just an overlay. So it's a bit like our birth name is the base of a lovely cake, but any other names that we have on top of that, that's a bit of filling and a little bit of icing on the top. It just enhances what is already there.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you. So we're going to go across to Selma, who is Light Mother from Selma Zone. We're going to go through the overviews of each of our guests first, and then we will get into the gubbins or the bits and bobs, everything inside that we found when we were scratching around and having a look at the vampire of Sacramento, the serial killer. So, hi, Selma. Welcome to the program. And please give us a bit of background about yourself for our viewers and listeners on the radio.
Yes, good evening, dear Beverli, Tia, audience in the chat and in the radio. I do different kinds of work. I'm an alternative therapist, I'm a coach, I'm a mental trainer, but also I have my spiritual side where I do light language. I activate or support other people to remember their light language. I do different kinds of spiritual consultancies. So in the nutshell, that's me. I'm doing this since more than 10 years internationally. I'm German, originally from my mother's side from Egypt, where I lived in the past 10 years. Yeah, and now I'm here. And very excited to share my insights on this case with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Selma. So I think what we can do is we can start having a look at some of the items. So before we get on to our guests and all the work that they've done, what I wanted to say is when I started remote viewing the vampire of Sacramento, I found that it was very hard for me to get towards him or to him because he was very painfully, heavily conflicted, and he had this very reflective, saturated spiritual energy. He was very weighted, very heavy, and quite parasitic in a way. And, you know, he had this unreal wave of energy around him. And he found this very distorted sound, and where he completely and utterly lost his empathy. So that was something that I thought, don't like this. I'm out of here. So what I did was I got out of there fast and thought, no, I'm not going to be transmuting any of this energy. So I'm wondering if our guests had actually picked up any of that. So guests, when you were doing the work, was there anything that either of you could share about anything that was very unusual? Because that's something that struck me. So Selma, would you give us an idea of when you were starting this work, did you find anything that was very odd about this character?
Yeah, I mean, like, what was odd was that he seemed to like gradually got into what he was doing. You know, he started with animals, and then like as if he thought to like cure that, he like continued with humans. So that was for me like something where I thought, okay, how come? Where was the point, the turning point for him, where he got deeper into that? Energies for me, like when I tuned into his energy field or into the energy field, I didn't feel well at all. And it's like as if like, you know, when you have like little bugs and little creatures running on your body, like running around you, running on your body, that was kind of the energy of it.
Wow.
So it was not very pleasant when I did that. My question is also, when I looked at his short bio, he seemed to like have done what he did in a very short period. You might,
1 year. Yeah,
one
just
year.
1 year.
So my question is like when I tuned into, I was like, okay, what can we find out? What happened before that year? Because he died very young, 30 years. And like, he did it shortly before he died. So what was the trigger? What happened? You know, had he kind of tendencies to that before, or did something happen in the age at the age of, I don't know, 28, 29? You know, this is also a very crucial age for everyone. You know, the end of 20s. Whereas like a shift in the development, a shift in the soul development. So these were questions I couldn't really find the answers to, but I'm curious to know what it was, or to discuss that with you, and maybe someone from the audience also has an idea or has a question about that. But that was my thing where I thought, okay, that's interesting in this case.
It is. And
Yeah.
Tia, I'm coming to you. Thank you, Selma. And Tia, I'm coming to you. Did you find, when you were looking at, you know, all the reports that you do and all the background and intense information, was there anything that was heavily weighted that you thought, oh, you know, this is again distorted, this is a problem within the Vampire of Sacramento?
Oh, absolutely. So when I did the soul plan, and then I meditated on it, and that was really, really difficult. And it was very interesting that you said there was a heaviness about him, because I expected him to be, with all the drug abuse and everything, I expected him to be completely all over the place. But in fact, he was very heavy. It was almost like he was full.
Oh.
And I got this terrible, terrible tannic taste in my mouth, you know, like a metal taste.
Yeah.
Which I'm assuming it could have been sort of a taste of blood. And I got this great, like you, I got this great weight and this real feeling of, I don't know where I am. I don't know what I'm doing. Real confusion. He just didn't know who he was, or what he was, or what he was doing, or what he had done. It's almost like it was, well, what was all that about? Which is very strange, which I think could be key to my summation.
Good. Thank you very much. So let's have a look at what was actually picked up when we started looking at the transmissions that were coming through, with the energies that were coming through, and why we all found that this particular individual was as different as he was, but also that he was trying to reflect on what he could have been and not what he became, because what he became was nowhere close to what he could have been before the age of 8. And when I was looking at him through remote viewing, up to the age of 8, he had fair game. You know, he had fair game. He could have been very different. He could have done something totally different. But then at age 8, we see this energy expanding, and he's becoming very, very different. So Selma, I'm coming back to you. And would you like to make a start on your findings, so that we can bring up some of your amazing images that you've got? Which is the first one that you want to talk through first?
The one with the numbers.
The one with the numbers. Okay.
Yeah, I used numerology, you know, a mix of Pythagorean and Kabbalistic and a bit of matrix numerology for this case. So I prepared these two different images, and the first image shows a human figure with energy field around him, and the different numbers that I found out for his birthday. His birthday is 23rd of May, 1950. So the first number, the soul number 5, that you find on his right, on the right side of his body, like from us on the left side, is number 5. So it's his birthday. So this is the core essence, and the core essence is like kind of like the inner guidance, you know, the inner compass that we actually all have, you know, our inner truth, our inner voice that kind of guides us throughout life. And it represents also our impulses, our core personality, that what drives us, that what motivates us, etc. So, of course, in numerology, the numbers, they have energies that go to the light and or that go to the dark. You know, so every number has like a different side to it. And the 5 can mean that you like are very adventurous, very sensually driven, that you actually you want stimulation, you know, you are like kind of like restless, you always want to like go out and experience something. This is more like towards the light side. In his case, he was of course more towards the dark, obviously, and you can even see that in these red energy streams that are like almost like wrapping around him from the ground up to his upper body. And when you are not centered and not integrated and also not connected to your roots, as well as to your to the universe through your crown chakra, you can become very unintegrated. So you have like a very unintegrated energy for the 5. So in your core essence, it's unintegrated. So it's not neither controlled nor streamlined, nor is it really calming or it goes like into a thoughtful channel. You know, so it's not channeled very thoughtfully. It's more unintegrated. Then we have the karma number, which is like according to his birth month, which is May, which is also a 5. And this is an interesting thing because he has here another 5, and the double 5 means also something. I will come to that later. So the karma is past life. So that person, he was very much influenced by past life karma. And past life karma with repeated lessons. So this means he not only had in his energy field repeated lessons, he also had repeated patterns. So repeated thought patterns, repeated emotional patterns, repeated behavioral patterns. So this was also quite heavy on him because his lessons were not really lessons of the light, were not really lessons of okay, I can easily like learn not to lie anymore, for example. You know, that was not that easy for him. So because of this double 5, so he had like double, like you could say like double karma and double negative karma, which was related more to chaos, to unprocessed impulses and uncontrolled desires. So that was something which I found interesting, this double 5 with him, like as if he had like double, triple like packages that he was not even aware of, you know, he couldn't even get rid of. Because I could imagine that back then the consciousness was not so much evolved, you know, especially not with him, that he could understand, oh, this is actually not my part from this life. This is something I'm carrying either from ancestors, you know, ancestral packages, or from past life. I could imagine that. So this is what you see here on his left and his right. So even when you see like the red energy streams around his body, as if he was caged in this energy, you know, as if he was caged in it. Then you have number 6, the year of his birthday, 1950, which is the Dharma number. And the Dharma number stands for, symbolizes an evolutionary path, the spiritual task. So what kind of spiritual task did he have? Normally the 6, when you are more on the light side, is like a path of care, of like emotional balance, of responsibility, of like really being thoughtful. I mean, like you said that he didn't have empathy, which of course we all could imagine. Someone like him at this stage never ever could have had a kind of empathy, but actually the 6 actually stands for that. But when the 6 leans more towards the shadow, it is as if a world, like the world is collapsed, you know, as if the soul, the personality, everything is fragmented. This is what it actually says. Like when you are spiritually not aligned and spiritually not aware, and you don't have that consciousness, you don't understand what your lessons are or should be, you don't understand your dynamic, your energetic dynamic, your spiritual dynamic, then that can lead to a very fractured and fragmented inner world. And as you can see, where this number is, it's very it's like on his left side, so it's very also like spinning around him, coming from the root and spinning around him, and like as if it would like to close him into a vortex, you know, from the bottom up to the top. And then we have the life path number 7, and this is derived from his from the overall journey, from his overall imprint, from like birthday, birth month, and birth year. And this is actually like, as if you would say, it's a blueprint. And that number 7 is actually, and this is what I find very interesting. It is actually a number that represents intellectuality, that represents wisdom and smartness, actually. So, and also like the ability to have really insight and to be a seeker of the truth. You know, when the 7 is like leans more towards the light. So he had that potential, I think. It could have been even that he maybe was highly intellectual and highly intelligent, and he could have had the spiritual wisdom and spiritual smartness, but clearly, because of all the other dynamics in his field, he became he was leaning more towards the dark side. So in the shadow, the 7, and that's the point, the person can become paranoid and dissociated very much with his own soul, with his own personality, with his own desires, with his own emotions, with everything that actually is him. This is the point, the dissociation. And at the same time, in regards to the being paranoid, you could be obsessed with inner realities that are disconnected from the collective normalities, let's say, you know. So, and this is of course like part of the definition of paranoia, that we say, like when someone has a different belief that goes way beyond the norm of the collective. And that was the case with him.
Yeah, it seems like it was very, very difficult. And with the amount of reds and very little of the higher soul entity colors in there, he lost his empathy, I think, at quite a young age. So if I move on to the next one, which is this one, this, if you can explain what you found with this, because this is a really interesting image, and it shows where and how the soul became fragmented. And then we were able to move on to Tia, who does soul planning and is a soul specialist. We can look at each of these areas here and perhaps get some of Tia's comments too. So please go ahead, Selma.
Yeah. This is based also on his like the overall the birthday connection with his name and all of that. And I was looking into, okay, if that person was possessed, I mean, like everyone who does energy healing knows that in the field we have like blockages, and these blockages are entities, and different types of entities, different types of layers. So we not only have like, oh, she's possessed by one demon, for example, or possessed by one entity. No, you can have different layers. For example, someone who smokes heavily has also layers of possessions in their field. So the one layer is that you can see here is the psychic lies, the astral parasite, which are more in the middle. It's like in his solar plexus, like it's like, it looks almost like a red cloud surrounding the area around his solar plexus. And that those entities are non-conscious, very low vibrational, and they feed on what is in the solar plexus. What they feed on? They feed on fear. They feed on trauma. They feed on all these negative blocked emotions that most of us carry in the solar plexus area. So, and when someone is like in the same situation or dynamic like that person, of course you would have a lot of congested, blocked and stuffed solar plexus area with negative entities. So and in regards to those low vibrational entities, they not only feed on fear, they also influence you. So they can, which can result in obsessive behavior. And in his case, the behavior was obsession with drinking the red liquid.
Yes.
Drinking it, injecting it, starting with animals and then moving on to humans. And so this is what these kind of energies can influence the person to. So this is one layer. Then we have another layer, which is like located in the mental body, that you can see is more around the shoulder area, also like a red cloud, like almost like the 360 degree, covering him from the front and the back. And here it's manifested as psychic structures, so it's like a thought form and a shadow entity attachment. So this is also one layer. And this is something we can find in a lot of people, and people don't have to be doing anything really bad to have these kind of thought forms. It's just a question of what is the overall dynamic, how are they connected to you, how big they are, and how severe you are giving in to their influence on you. So when you do that, and when you give in to these thought forms influencing you, then they run you. So instead of you being in control of them, they are being in control of you. So in his case, being also not labeled, but kind of like, I would say maybe in that time, being diagnosed maybe even with paranoia. He was believing that other people would poison him and would steal his body parts. And maybe that's why he turned and started to steal other people's body parts. So this is one thing. Another thing is what these thought forms do. They also create voices that you hear, and that you hear either talking about yourself, or you think this is your voice. You know, like sometimes it's like other voices, or you think, oh, it's even your voice. And when you think that it's your voice, you are being pushed and like influenced to do different kind of behavior that is maybe not your core behavior. So given that he was very dissociated from himself and dissociated from his own personality, there was no wonder that he was kind of like giving in to these kind of thought forms that made him even also disconnected from like feeling and understanding and like integrating with his environment.
So with this area here, do you think that part of that was, because if you remember earlier, when I looked at him, I saw that he had this level of dissociativeness, but also that there could have been this, where you see yours is saying you've got the shock and the trauma, with the soul fragmentation, that there could have been a little bit of multiple personality disorder, which perhaps might have been with those red items that you can see on your really great drawing there, that might have been a level of possession. So Tia, bring you in here just to look at some of those areas within there, because we see at the top the anti-life entities, which is the disconnection from the soul and the dark urges. So we know that the vampire of Sacramento did away with himself, or unalived himself, because we have to be friendly here and not say certain words. So we know that he unalived himself. Do you have any comments around those areas that Selma have gone through and things that have been picked up from that particular point of view? Was there anything in the soul plan that you saw that might have pulled some of this in?
Yes, I mean, when I go through my soul plan, I think it will align quite nicely with this, because he started off, a really cool kid. He networked, he was good at school. It wasn't really until he started sort of going to high school when things started to change. But we know he had an incredibly dysfunctional family. So it is my suggestion that there were always these entities around him. They were always at home. There was always arguments. There was violence in the family. There was sexual abuse in the family. And as you said, Selma, there was these entities feed off of fear. So I think he was a very, very scared little boy that normalized all this. So the entities actually fed off of all this, even when he was sort of starting to grow up and have a so-called normal life. So, and as far as the soul fragmentation is concerned, I think you might find interesting what some of my findings would be. So let's see.
Oh, that's super. Thank you very much. So Selma, please carry on. I noticed you've got astral parasites here. So some of you in the chat would remember astral parasites from some of my other shows as psychic lice. Yes, folks, there is such a thing of psychic lice. And now everybody's going to be scratching because, yes, there's such a thing as psychic lice. I'll pass you back to Selma. Go on, Selma. Let's carry on with this strange individual.
Yeah. Then we have the layer of the soul, and I would be curious to see or to hear what the findings of Tia are in this on this layer, for this layer. So what I find out was that he must have had an extreme trauma. Something must have triggered him, like extreme trauma in his in that current life that he was in, where he had a mental collapse, and where his soul got fragmented and partially disconnected from his body. So like as if like the soul made room in his body for something else to come in, or something else to take over, let's say. and he had like, in his case, he had like the tendency of cannibalism and necrophilia with no remorse, no emotional awareness, and he was repetitive in his actions, repetitive. So, and repetitive in this 1 year. So I really wonder this point of soul fragmentation. I find it quite interesting, where he got the disconnection and dissociation, I would believe, in this layer. Then you have, and you can also see that on the painting or on the drawing, that his legs and his roots, he was completely disconnected, completely, as if he was not walking on earth at all, as if he even didn't have any connection to the earth, to the ground, to his roots, to his lower chakras, nothing whatsoever, as if he was not in control. You know, these blue energy streams that were like kind of like even holding him and keeping him captured in that. Then we have a layer of, they call it death entities, anti-life and death entities. And this is the point where we say, oh, okay, there is another really darker entity that had taken over of his body and maybe even of his soul. I would assume, I don't say it was like this, but I would assume, because they call them the dark interdimensional intelligences who turn people into instruments of chaos, terror, and entropy. So he had this kind of like possession, one of his layers, where he could not really be in control of his own actions and desires, and the evidence in his case is that he did his actions. I want to be like a bit thoughtful with the words that I'm using.
I think so. Please do.
Yeah, exactly. So he did his repetitive actions that we all know about, you know, and unaliving innocence and aliving the young innocents, and like doing with the bodies what he did. And this is kind of like connected also to that layer of possible possession.
What was interesting on your picture here, that particularly around the basal chakra, so where he was unable to perform particularly because his masculinity had malfunctioned. I had to go around that one as well, guys. This is a difficult one to find something else, because we know that we're not allowed to say certain words here. But where he was unable to perform, what I'm finding interesting is when I had a look at his entire torso, that particular area had been caged and was completely black. In other words, the energetics was not reaching any of those areas at all in the lower quadrant. So that includes the upper legs and the basal area where his bottom is and where his front bottom is. All of that was completely black. And that, although it's quite black on this visual representation, for those of you that are on the radio, we have a strong visual representation on the screen at the moment of a male torso, head to toe, basically, and has a lot of different energies in swirls and patterns around the entire body, with blue around the knees, the legs, and a lot of red in specific areas. But more importantly, where the feet are, they're not actually attached to the ground. So this person is not grounded, is actually moved upwards and is held by whatever the entity is that is around him.
Yes, and when you look exactly, there is kind of like a violet cloud above his head, you know. So he was disconnected even from his crown chakra up to, like, you know, being connected to the light, to being connected to the universe. So as if he was squeezed from above and below, you know, and taken, like, as if you know, like something like just takes your energy from the middle chakras of your body and like interferes and does whatever it wants to do with that person. So he was completely disconnected energetically on as you can see on that picture. This I find, I mean, like, I haven't worked on something like this in that case before, and I have never seen a drawing of that in this regard. You know, someone really completely disconnected from both energy streams, you know, that are vital to function as a human in this world. You know, to function as a human in this.
Person.
And of course, his untreated mental illness and the heavy drug abuse and the severe emotional neglect and trauma and his spiritual disconnection and isolation, and also his problems with his body not being fully functioning, that was also like all of that was a multi-layered form of a package, you know. And then think about this and his double karma that he was not able to handle and to
deal with. So
to deal
before we go on to the summation from Selma, we've got a good question here, particularly from Erica Nelson. And I think that this particular question is directed at you, Tia. And that is, what happens when we are adopted and the name was changed?
Okay, really good question. Thank you, Erica. So your soul plan, the soul plan that we would do would be on your birth name. So these are the traits. This is your soul challenge, talents, goals, and your soul destiny is all predestined. However, when you change your name, it can only enhance what you have already been given. So in fact, you've sort of like got a double piece of the pie. The only time sometimes when it can have a negative impact is, say, if you're given a nickname and it's not a particularly creative one, that can sort of hold you back. But with a second name given in love and love and light of the child, it can only enhance what you've already got, because we're all, no matter how much we don't like our birth name, we will resonate on a certain level with it, and there'll be certain parts of it that we do and don't like. And when you do your soul plan, you'll go, oh, that's why it makes me go a bit, you know, maybe I might think about changing that part of my name. And I actually work with individuals that want to change their name, or they want the name of a baby to relate into that certain family. So if your family, your new family, gave you a different name, it would probably mean that you would relate much better to that family, because not only have you got all this lovely stuff going underneath that you came to them with, but they're enhancing that and putting their energies and the different names that they give you for the rest of your life. So it's generally an enhancement.
So does that mean then?
Your question.
Does that mean then, if somebody's born with, because sometimes you get cross-border adoptions and you get cross countries. We know many countries where babies have been brought, say, from Korea into America or Korea into the UK. If there was a traditional name that was given, or there was a particular name that was given, and then they move countries, and because that name is not necessarily understood, they change that to an English name. What would happen then? Does it mean that person has to then keep the name that they were originally born with, say, for instance, in Korea, South Korea?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, it's not a case of keeping it. It's a case of that's who you are. That is with you for the rest of your life.
So is it best for that person then to change back to the South Korean name because that's what they were born with?
What you can actually find is that people that I mean, I've had one client actually only just literally a couple of days ago, who was actually Nepalese.
Oh.
And she had this beautiful Nepalese name. She came over to the UK with her family because her dad was a Gurkha. And her dad, with the best intent, decided to call her an English name.
Mm-hmm.
Now, while it worked a bit, she didn't really align with it, and she felt that it held her back. Where when she started going by her original Nepalese name, everything in the UK seemed to fall into place. So, you know, your main first birth certificate name, that is the core to your soul plan. Everything else is, I say, the icing on the cake and the filling that will enhance it. You know what? You might go through your life and go, well, I don't resonate with that name anymore now. And then you call yourself something else. And then you call yourself something else, you know. So it could be that you have multiple names throughout your life. But the one thing that will never change is your core name, which is the one that you were actually blessed with when you were born, or that your parents or whoever brought you up gave you.
That's perfect. Well, Erica Nelson, that was the question originally from Erica Nelson. And as you can see, she has said here, Erica Nelson, that happened to me. So I hope, Erica, that has answered some questions. So it's that dreadful time again where we've got to do the station ID. So here we go. It's not tape recorded. It's one-on-one. So thank you, everyone, for listening to and watching. We are on UFO, Paranormal, and United Public Radio Network, broadcasting to you on 105.3 FM out of Mississippi and along the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. Yes, and I know I always say it wrong, everyone, but, you know, I'll get it right one of these days, you know, hang fire. You know, give a girl a break. Right, let's carry on and let's see what else we're going to go to. So let's go to, have you got your ideas of where you're coming from, Tia? I've got to try and find your soul plan that you sent through. And I'm going to call on Laura Lee to help me put up this soul plan, because it's not the easiest thing to put up. And we did have a little bit of a battle. No, that's not it. Oh my goodness. Just everyone, this is only episode 2. Trust me, I will get better. I will. No.
Yeah. As long as it's just flashed on the screen so that our viewers can just have a quick glance of what
before it comes up on the screen, because I'm sure Laura Lee is looking for it. Could you explain to us with the soul plan, what are we expected to see in the soul plan before it comes up on the screen?
Okay. Well, I will talk it through for our radio listeners. Yes. So like I said, there's the star of creation, which is the gematria. And that is made up of 2 triangles. So we have a triangle facing downwards, and then we have a triangle facing upwards. So the triangle facing downwards, that is our world. So there on each corner, we read our worldly challenges, our worldly talents, and our worldly goals. And these are the areas that occur between when we're born and up to about 30 years old. I mean, sometimes it can be 28, sometimes it can be sort of mid-30s, but that's the rough idea. So our worldly parameters are about the I. It's about who am I? Where am I? Where am I going? What am I going to do? And then when I will say late 20s, early 30s, that's what we're looking at for Richard, because he never got to his 30s. So for Richard's soul plan, the upper triangle, which are his spiritual challenges, spiritual talents, and spiritual goals, we're looking at probably the last 2 years of his life. And that is when we get into our 30s ish, that is where we start thinking about, what am I here to do? How am I doing it? Where am I going? There must be more to life than this. Oh, Lorelei, you're a sweetheart. Thank you so much. So as you can see on the screen, we have the 2 triangles. So, and then bang smack in the middle. So if you close the triangle up and you opened it out, it opens out like a beautiful flower. And in the middle is our soul destiny. And then, as you can see on the corners, not only have you got the worldly and spiritual areas, but you also have the numbers where we have converted the name into numbers. And you will also see the Hebrew signs for that number. So would you like me to make a start with Richard, Beverli?
Yes, please. Would you make a start, seeing as we've heard from the lovely Selma? Give us an idea of what this is, and we can have a scamper through that. And then please go straight into your summation. If there are any questions, please put QQQ into the chat so that I can come and find you, and I will star. We've got 4 questions up at the moment. So please, feel free to ask any questions for this second half of the show.
Okay. So, this is such an interesting soul plan. I wasn't expecting this in any way, shape, or form. So, let's get into it. So, if you can see the chart, and for those that are on the radio, what Richard has is he has a 7-7 worldly challenge, which is the Hebrew letter Zayin, and he also has a 7-7 worldly goal. So with these 2 worldly 7-7s, it actually means that everything intensifies, the focus intensifies on his pivotal themes within his life experiences within the world domain. So before we even start, the kid has got weight on his shoulders. He's chosen a very, very difficult path. So, as we said before, we know he's come from a really dysfunctional family. So, this would have led to very harsh self-control, leading to physical rigidity. That's the 7-7 aspect here. So we could take this literally as far as part of his base chakra and the issues that he had around that. And that might have accounted for sort of his impotency, but also for his hypochondriac tendencies. So, I mean, it was very interesting what Sama was saying about his head almost not being attached to like his crown chakra, because one of the things that Richard said when he was a very young boy was that he felt like his skull, the bones were moving. He would often be found standing on his head, holding his head, because he felt like his head was moving. So, this could be this physical rigidity, that things weren't quite as they were. So he also had severe hypochondriac tendencies, specifically and unfounded around his heart. So on many occasions, again, he claimed on numerous occasions, someone's stolen my pulmonary artery. It's crazy things. Where do you get that from? So if his chakras were out of alignment, he really had to concentrate to try and keep himself grounded in the physical, which was taken to a ridiculous level, really. So again, in his early years, he was, like we said, he was popular. He was popular at college. Nothing out of the ordinary. And he's in his 7/7 attributes there. He's a networker. He would put people together, and he would join teams, and he would join clubs. But increasingly, early college years, we're talking about the 7/7 negative attributes starting to come in. And that's around depression, disillusionment, mental health issues, where he was ultimately diagnosed as schizophrenic. And these were increasing. So with all this going on, the 7/7 reclusiveness and the mistrust started creeping in. A 7/7 also can have a denial of his shadow side. So if there is a denial of one side or the other, we can be inclined to over-focus on the physical body, which again would account for his hypochondriac tendencies. He was always on a non-conventional path, that with the double 7/7. So we know as a teenager, he used to do recreational drugs and then ultimately became a prolific drug user. And with that, he had a predisposition of being prone to fantasies and more mistrust. So due to his 7/7 non-participation challenge, his nature became more unstable. He wasn't able to draw on his 7/7 potential attributes, which would have been significant, especially with two 7/7s. And he started seeing an intensified focus on the negative aspects. And that really was the beginning of him manifesting his immoral, nauseating, violent behavior, which escalated into his later crimes. So if we then look at his 14/4, which is his worldly talents, and that's represented by the two Hebrew letters, Nun and Hey. So with a 14/4 in his worldly challenge, he lacked boundaries. And we know because of the 7/7 influence of everything being that bit stronger in his world, the worldly part of his chart, he wouldn't only lack boundaries, he would have nothing. There would be no feeling there at all. And this was intense. So he was beginning to be totally ungrounded in normality. And again, when we look at Selma's picture, his feet weren't even on the ground. And that was from a very, very early age. So therefore, his unaliving became part of his normality, starting with small animals, intensifying to humans. The boundaries didn't stop at unaliving, though. That's when we go into cannibalism and doing things with unalived individuals and animals and basically anything he could get his hands on, by the sounds of it. So a 14/4 can have a personal understanding of the abstract and spiritual concepts. The other really interesting bit that I sort of went bingo on, and that was a 14-4 has absorption issues. So in Richard's case, the absorption concepts were around his body dysmorphia. You know, it's about, you know, he not liking himself. He became dirty. He became unkempt. You know, he thought his organs were wrong. His heart was wrong. His bones were wrong. So he was beginning here to take on board the concept of if he absorbed the blood and organs of small animals, that this would heal his heart issues. He did have a natural holistic intelligence, though, but it appeared to be really warped and changed by his increasing drug use. So as he became more ungrounded, as he became more aligned with abstract concepts that were ungrounded, the drug use increased. So that's his worldly part. So that's where we're up to probably about 28, 29. So he's on this downward, very, very dark path. So when we look at the spiritual part of his chart, so this is like our triangle going upwards. So we first look at his spiritual challenge, which is an 11-2, which are the Hebrew letters Kaf and Bet. So here with an 11-2, it's very much a polarity number. So you've got the polarity between life and demise. So he would have potentially believed that his unalivings that were at this time becoming really quite intense gave him more life. But conversely, with this, he was losing his resilience and he was becoming more and more unstable and gaining a greater dependency on his unalivings. And there could have potentially been a belief there that taking on the health and essence of his victims was increasing because he needed more and more of this essence to keep him going. So as Salma was saying earlier, you know, it was about, you know, the more fear, or it wasn't fear with him then. It was just everything else and his mental issues that were going on. You know, these entities were just feeding more and more, not off of his fear, but fear of the victims, fear of Sacramento, you know, because there was this mad vampire killer on the loose. So the more that was going on, the more he killed. So moving now to his spiritual talents, which seems a very strange thing to do for this gentleman concerned, but he did have them. So this is a 3-3, Hebrew letter Gemel. So here we see him not listening. We know that he used to have physical fights with people, especially his mother. He never listened to his sister. He never listened to his father. Being increasingly detached. So again, it's removing himself, but feeling lost, often hiding after his crimes. Beverli said that earlier on. So his increasing issues with his self-worth and his depth of reliance on feeling the energies of his unalived benefactors was really coming to the fore in the last year of his life. So we then go on to his spiritual goals, which is a 10-1, which is the Hebrew letters of Aleph and Yod. So at this point, his spiritual goals, he had total denial of his spirituality. He was just not there at all. He was unconnected to reality, but totally connected to the physical. obsessively so. He didn't like himself. He had this real deep loathing, and not for what he was doing, but for who he was. And he didn't understand who he was, and what he was doing was the norm. So it wasn't about the loathing of what he was doing. It was about the loathing of himself, because his body didn't feel right. He wasn't connected with his physical body in any way, shape or form, but he also wasn't spiritual. So, which is a really, really sad sort of position to be in. So with this deep loathing, there was also, again, a bit of a juxtaposition. There was a perfectionist aspect to this. And you think, well, you know, this dirty mass murderer, how can he be a perfectionist? But it actually shows in his killings. So the 10-1 perfectionist side, you know, with all his unalivings, he meticulously rearranged organs. He specifically placed things in certain places. He specifically drank things in a specific way. And he placed things in the body of the people that had demised. So that was him up to that point. So now we go to his soul destiny, which is the little bit in the middle. And this, I think, was the thing that really quite blew my mind when I meditated on this. So we're back to that 7-7 again. So the Hebrew letter Zayin and his soul destiny. So he now has 3 7-7s. So the 7-7 in the soul destiny in all 3 areas is so rare and such a profound configuration. So what do we know about Richard? He was here to walk the hardest road, and that at the core of his soul journey, it is actually extremely spiritually significant. So it makes you think that had he not gone down his dark soul destiny, what could he have achieved in the light? Which is really, really interesting. So to me, that gives me the thought that he was a special soul. He was a very special individual. So he would be key potentially for possession. He would be like a shining light for them to come and potentially take over. So the 7-7 energy is around, the soul destiny is around mysticism, isolation, solitude, often by painful means, intuition through suffering, and spiritual mastery. So in conclusion, oh goodness, we can see Richard has manifested a very dark soul destiny. But I put a question out to you in the chat and out in the audience in Radio Land. Was it achieved through his dysfunctional family, genetics, past life? For the doctors of you out there, was it just a mental health issue and all this is airy-fairy? Or was he such a bright light that had to be put out and he was possessed? And I'm going to leave that with you. Thank you.
Wow, that's really good. Well, certainly a lot of food for thought. And I just wanted to say that we've got Canada's Most Haunted, and we've got UFO Paranormal and all sorts of amazing channels in the chat. My colleagues have all come here today to support this new show. So remember, like and subscribe so that we can get this out everywhere. Please make sure that you have a look at this, tell your friends and everyone about it, because We're only going to get stronger and stronger. So Selma, you have got to put your summation forward, please. What are you deciding based on all your pictures and everything that you saw and what you were feeling? What can you tell us? What did you feel was the final outcome of everything that you saw and everything that was transmitted to you?
Well, I think that he, to answer one of the questions of Tia, I found it very, very fascinating, Tia. And you were just saying that is like a small part of the soul plan, just like a short info already, and it's like, wow, so interesting what you can achieve with that soul plan reading. Very fascinating. So I would like to answer maybe one of the questions that Tia put out there. Was he actually a bright light that had to be put on that track? I believe that he had the potential of being very light, being bright. I believe that he had a certain smartness, that he was actually spiritually, or had like the opening of a spiritually awareness, a spiritual awareness. But when you have that, and it's not channeled in the right way, and it's not channeled in a healthy way, and you are completely disconnected from your body, completely disconnected from the ground, from the roots, that you like develop into what he energetically, what he developed into. I'm not saying necessarily you develop into his habits, into his actions, but that the tendency of like opening up and being kind of like a nurture ground for different layers of possession is very likely. And this is what I would say. And I would say yes, in my opinion, and in what I found out through my research, and also through my own tools, and through my own tuning in, I would say that definitely there were layers of possession with him. And then there's also one thing I'm thinking about, when you give someone a name, a label, the vampire of, this is also something that entities feed on, because it is an identity. So now you're not just maybe a mental sick human having a dark energy around, you are even someone who has a title. A title that is even used in tales, in books, in movies, in series, in whatever. So you identify with that persona. And this intensifies, like being even integrating even more with this persona, into this persona. And he had in his numbers, and I think Tia also said that, he had an amplifier in his numbers. So one of his number combination is amplifying. So the dynamic, either light or dark, is amplifying. So I find this also quite crucial, let's say, not critical, but crucial in his development, or in his further identifying with this persona, the vampire of Sacramento.
That's all very interesting. And from my point of view, looking at all of the facts and all of the items that you both researched extremely well on this character, there is a lot of similarity between both of your reports. They both look at the various options where the starting point was an individual that had a great deal of light, and that could, before the age of 8, could have done good things. This, as a person that runs Demon Hunters Incorporated across the world, this is something that is looked at quite often. And where we see that there are individuals that have been demonized from the age of before the age of 8 and thereafter, particularly with those that are sadistic, That energy then carries through and is incorporated within the bodies of the children. This then moves right through into everything that happens within their atmosphere, within their home environment, their school environment, and everything moving forward. So from that point of view, we see that there must have been, and perhaps allegedly there might have been, something that happened to him when he was younger that allowed that schism, where that energy had opened up sufficiently to enable other entities or other parasites to come in. And when we see that the energetics and the aura and all the different values of the toroidal field, so the field that runs around the body, we can see that there are slithers, there are areas that are pulling away, and all of that enables entities and other attachments. So based on the reports that we've seen here tonight, audience, we then think that to answer the question, was the vampire of Sacramento possessed? Based on the evidence that we've seen and the channeled information, as well as the transmissions that have come through, in my view, I think that it is highly probable that this individual was acting out some form of attachment or some demonization. The reason why we go to that final aspect is twofold. Firstly, when we look at the higher energies where there are particular demonic entities that require some sort of rite of passage, or they require the individual to unalive themselves, we know that he was squirreling away tablets into his cell 36 times the original dose. 36 times the original dose. It's enough to knock out an elephant. So he was adamant he was going to do this. So we know that unalived was part of it. And as Salma had shown in her pictures, the unalived section at the top was where all those demonic, types that will be asking and pulling the energy and pulling the soul out of the body to unalive themselves. So we've got that. The other aspect that we have, which is very clear, is that he had left in his cell different types of sigils and different types of squares. And through all of my research and research of the team that we have, there was no visual representation of those images found anywhere on the internet. We also searched the dark web for it. There was nothing on the dark web. And yet the court and the documentation from the prison had stated that they had seen this. These types of aspects show us with the sigils and the squares, this person was obviously demonized, because those sigils, if we'd had that evidence, we would have been able to say, that sigil there is a sigil that we know from these individuals. Those are the sigils that encapsulate, capture, and cage the vital essence of an individual, so that when they are transitioning, they catch him. And this is possible. So if we had had all of that information, we would have known that this is what happened to him. But we don't know for sure whether he managed to escape his fate or whether those sigils actually worked. We don't know that. So part of the final conclusion of this, before we get to the questions, so get your questions in there quick, everyone, because that's where I'm going to start picking them up. The final conclusion is that this person, particularly Richard Chase, which is his human name that he had when he was born, the vampire of Sacramento, the secondary name, carrying a different type of energy, I believe, based on the evidence, that he was not only possessed by one, but at least a minimum of between 5 and 7 core, key, individual demonic strands that could have gone as far as a duke level because of the types of crimes, and also because he was utilizing the very, very young and also fetuses. This is a trademark and signature of specific types of demonic entities. So that's my summation, and that's my conclusion. And our panel have done some amazing work over the last week, and I thank you so much. We're now going to go to your questions, and let's make a start. What do we have? We have got at the top here. Oh, we have 9 questions now. Right. This is a very interesting one. Hi, Shane. Nice to see you. So Shane is asking us here, can that be wished upon someone? So I think the question really is it possible to send a demonic entity to a person directly? In other words, by either an incantation or some sort of a spiritual ritualistic aspect. So I will comment on this first, and then I'll go to our panel. Shane, absolutely yes, you can. You can do this in many different ways. There are different types of cults that can do this quite easily. And also you have ancestral aspects that sometimes ancestrally somebody will bring something down, and those ancestral issues, particularly if you're living on ground that is common or has a lot of these ancestral creatures running with them, yes, it can be wished upon someone. I'll pass this across to Selma. What is your view for this question that Shane has brought, please?
Yes, of course, for sure, definitely. Can this be put on someone? This and even more can be put on someone, for sure. There are different tools, different techniques, different scripts, different things. When you are trained in that, you can do that on someone. The question is just what kind of karma is the person who's doing that loading onto himself, you know?
Yeah.
This is one thing. So once you go down that spiral, it's really difficult to go out of the spiral. And another thing is that what you, Bev, also already said is that you can actually carry these kind of energies with you from past life, you know, or from before birth. This can be put on you even when you're in the womb of the mother, or even before that, energetically and as an imprint in your soul's path. So yes, for sure.
Yeah. And Tia, I'm coming to you with Shane asking, can demonization be wished upon someone? What's your view on that, please?
Oh, my view on that is I've actually seen it. I used to have a member of my team at work who was a lovely Zulu gentleman, the most gentlest soul that you would ever wish to meet. And his girlfriend, or his son's mother, actually wished a similar thing on him. And the gentleman, I actually saw his personality change literally overnight. And if it hadn't have been for my colleague at work, and he ended up actually having to go to a known witch doctor in London. Wow. And he had to do all sorts of things, but and in the end they did manage to exorcise him, and he did get back to his normal self after a very long period of time. But yeah, that was quite an amazing experience. So I think when we talk about these entities, I think, you know, it's a worldwide thing. It's in some cultures it's more accepted and known than others, and it is taken as, well, it's just there, where perhaps in our culture it's not recognized quite as fully as it should be, because it's hidden in plain sight. So yeah, that will be my answer. Thanks, Beverly. Good question. Wow. Great, Shane.
It was a good question. Thank you for that question, Shane. Then we have Akwana with a turtle or a tortoise. This is the question we have from Akwana. Had he become dependent on cannibalism and drinking of red bodily fluids? So my comment on that, Akwana, is generally within cannibalism and blood drinking, the energetics that surround those two aspects are significant. And there is a spirit within both of those that over a protracted period of time, that spirit in itself becomes attached to the person. So very much part of the cannibalism is that you become, or the energy of the person becomes the energy of those that you have consumed. In Africa, particularly in South Africa, there are some tribes that believe that you need to take a piece of the deceased and you need to consume some of the flesh. And you need to make sure that you take some of the flesh with you in order to keep them alive with you. But it goes further than this. Cannibalism eventually changes some of the structures within the toroidal field, which allows then for other entities to come in, which are part of the ancestral field. And over time, it takes between 7 and 10 years for that full possession. That cannibal will then become a totally different entity and a totally different person. So my comment on that is twofold. Yes, you do become dependent on cannibalism. And secondly, yes, you can become dependent on a type of blood drinking like we see in New Orleans and Louisiana State and all those other areas. It's quite common. It has a specific type, frame, and way and ritual that they undertake it. So my answer to that would be yes. And I'm going to go around the other way this time. I'm going to go to Tia, and then I'm going to come to you, Selma. What is your comment for Akwana's question on becoming dependent on cannibalism and drinking of the red stuff?
Yeah, thanks, Beverli. Thanks, Akwana. Great question again. Again, I'm going to go back to, I'm just going to go back to his worldly talent. So, not the best talent to have. So, he had absorption issues, and any issue that he thought he had, he would drink more to try and solve the issue. So if he drank a small bit and nothing happened, he would drink some more, and then he would drink some more until we know he was hospitalized on numerous occasions because his body had rejected the blood. So, it was there. It was there in his the absorption issues were there in his soul plan, and his mental health issues meant that he was working against that. I am going to absorb this. It is going to go in, when actually it was never going to.
Wow, thank you. And that's from a clinical point of view, particularly. So, Selma, what do you feel about that particular question? Do you think that cannibalism and drinking the red stuff is something that not only is it an acquired taste, but it's something that you can become accustomed to and become not addicted to, but you can become extremely fond of and continue with? What's your comment on that?
Yeah, for sure. And for me, the proof is that he started with animals and then went over to humans. So as if it is also like a psychological satisfaction, you know what I mean? It's not only the let's call it the nutrient that he thought would get. I think it's the psychological part of that is like satisfactory of taking over, being in power, being overpowering that soul, that body, like devastating it to an extent that I have the satisfaction of it. I think this is the really addictive part behind that, not necessarily the nurture. I call it nurture. Of course, it's not nurture for humans, but I just call it nurture. It's not that. I believe it's like the psychological part that is actually the addictive part in this kind of behavior.
Yeah, this is quite something. Thank you for those. So we've got Misinformation, who has sent us a question and said, where is his soul now? So if you don't mind, panel, I'll take this one quickly because we're heading up to the hour and we've still got to have our last say as well as our thank yous to everyone in the chat. Misinformation, his soul is actually going through a regeneration, because part of his issue was that half of him wanted to be this way, the other half didn't. He also was able to remove himself. No one is beyond saving. No one is beyond the light of the creator or source or any aspect that you might wish to call it. If you ask for that deliverance, you will receive it. And even though it's not commonly known, this very difficult person, who is actually a really sad individual, Vampire of Sacramento, did ask for some form of forgiveness when he was getting ready to unalive himself. So he was moved into an area so that the light can penetrate him once more and make him well. So I thought it's a good question. Thank you so much, Misinformation. And we will quickly go to Indiana Farm Girl. So nice to see you here, Indiana Farm Girl. Glad that the weddings went off really well. Thank you for the lovely pictures, and you're looking lovely as always. So Indiana Farm Girl, yes, she does live on a farm in Indiana. Who knew? Why did he unalive himself so young? Mental health, attachments, misaligned energy, and substances, probably all of it. So this one, in the court documents and in the documents from the prison, although he was being treated, if you remember, he had 36 times the limit of his medication. He'd been squirreling away all that medication for such a long time. So he did have lots of substances, which he was actually given on medications or on prescription. So I think that the mental health, yes, and the attachments was all part of it, as well as the misaligned energy. In my view, Indiana Farm Girl, all of those that you've mentioned, I think, played a part. And panel, do you agree? Yes, you do.
Yeah, I do. But I can add a little bit to that when I went into my meditation, and that was, it is my belief that the entities weren't being fed when he was in jail. So therefore, I believe that there was a part of him, the real Richard, was coming back. And I think it was just all too much.
Yeah, thank you.
I agree with you. I wanted to say that also, like consider that in jail, he wouldn't get this kind of nurture that he was addicted to, and his kind of psychological satisfaction that his energy field was addicted to. Plus, I guess he had lifelong sentence. So there was no way, no hope, nothing of like getting back to what he was used to. So I believe it was all of the above, and this point that Tia pointed out.
I mean, I believe he was sentenced to death, and he didn't want to wait for that.
Gosh,
because sometimes you can wait sort of like tens of
13 years and things. Yeah, I noticed that. Thank you.
He really couldn't live with himself. That's my belief.
Thank you, Indiana Farm Girl. So we have another one. Cats. Fascinating. There's a look, isn't there? The face changes like a glitch, or black eyes. Yes, there is actually. There is a look. And when you see it, you understand that perhaps there's that reptilian Draco code in them that is, switched on. And then they look at you and you think, oh, Lord, here we go. And this then, because remember also in the transcripts, there was a section that said that he blacked out. Do you remember, panel, when you were reading all the transcripts? he had said he didn't understand. He didn't remember, particularly in the early in that year, because he only did 1 year of this awful reign of terror that he had. But he was constantly blacking out. And part of an unusual attachment is if there has been reptilian code or Draco code that has been activated in a body, you will find that it's too strong because they're extremely big, they're huge. And it then shuts out the human mind. They black out after they've done whatever they want to do. And this is it. And then eventually they come back into their body, they wake up, and then they see the devastation that the Draco have undertaken. So yes, it is a glitch and the black eyes. And I'm going to hide that one. Thank you for that. And we have got from Kate Snyder Sterling, who is also a demon hunter with a little dog. Do you suppose he was facing his own karma from prior lives in this recent life? If so, what a double whammy to have karma in that tough soul plan. So what is the answer to this, everyone? Yes, I think it's a double whammy. From my point, does everybody agree with Kate? Yes, double whammy. Absolutely. Yes, he was facing his own karma from his prior lives. Nice to see you here, Kate. So we've got Jennifer Weedmark. How do you get rid of dark energies that are attached to somebody for a few years now? So this is always a very interesting question. Firstly, you have to ascertain that they are there. So there is a command that you can give to anybody that you think might possibly have an attachment walking with them. And the reason for that is because the universal command is noted, agreed, and accepted across all universes. Not just our universe, not just our Milky Way, not just our planet. If you command it, everybody knows, all entities, all off-worlders, or if you want to call them aliens, they all know. If it's been commanded, they have to obey. So, if this is the only thing you learn from this show today, remember this command. I command you in the name of Source. I command you in the name of the Christ consciousness to reveal yourself. And whatever's in front of you will reveal itself because it has to. So remember those phrases. And whatever you see in front of you, you'll then know what you're dealing with. I hope that helps. Thank you, Jennifer. That was a really good question. Right, we've asked where is his soul now. And, oh, this is a nice one. Misinformation. What does being unalive by a vampire do to the victim's soul? If the red stuff was drunk by someone else, or do they take a part of all of you at all, like especially at the time when you pass? So yeah, this is a two-part question really, and we'll go through the two-part question. So the victim's soul, if it was a vampire hunting and attacking and taking the victim, the vampire that has taken that life by draining a victim, that soul will go straight to Source. However, if there was a victim that is a volunteer victim, different type of victim, where during a feeding frenzy, that person willingly, and believe me, there are people that willingly give their neck or give their leg and say, there you go, get your chompers in there, mate, have a good go, have a good drink. That then becomes a tainted soul. But as I said earlier, there's no soul that is beyond redemption. Light can always penetrate a soul. There is always a form of redemption, which is what we have here on this Earth planet, on Earth School. Would any of the panel like to comment about this particular question from misinformation? No? You good? Okay. Thank you. Let's have a look. And we have got 4 minutes left, so we can just look at one next question. We've done that one already. And Agent Orange. Hi, Agent Orange. Haven't seen you for ages. Welcome. An SA offender was fighting off something on his deathbed. He appeared to a construction crew and then a new tenant at his property. What's behind his afterlife activities? Good question there. Good question. Yes, the SA offender on his deathbed, when he was moving across, transitioning, he would have been fighting off all sorts of things. It sounds to me like he's probably attached here and maybe locked in, so he could do with some sort of rescue work and that sort of thing. Do any of the panel have a quick comment on that before we go to close the show?
What I immediately got is that this person is like doesn't want to let go.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't want to let go of what he used to do and what this energy was that made him do what he did. This is what I got.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. He's very, very attached to the physical. Very attached to the physical, and not only can't let go, he doesn't know how to let go. So I would go with Beverli, and that, you know, there needs some sort of exorcism help there.
Definitely. Yes, banishing, here we come. And this is our last question, and thank you to everyone who put questions in the chat. We didn't get to all of them. We managed to get to, well, over half actually, but thank you so much for the participation, and we'll keep those for next time. We've got Sparky's Paranormal and Outdoors. What a cool name. The question here is there not a difference with the birth name, the love or nickname, the craft name, then the spiritual name or the true name? This one truly is going to have to be for you, Tia. Sorry to put you on the spot for the last question before we go to close the show. So please go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, Sparky. There is a difference. There is a difference between the birth name and all the others. So all the other names are what we call an overlay. So the birth name is your core name. A nickname, a loving name, that's the icing on the cake.
Oh, super.
So a spiritual name, again, what we do is we take your birth name as it is on your birth certificate, and then say you've got a spiritual name of Blue Dragon. What we would then do is we would take spiritual dragon, and then we would map it across onto your birth name, and then we would find out exactly what areas. So it might enhance, some of the letters might enhance your talent. It might help you. You might get a talent in Blue Dragon that would actually help you solve your spiritual challenges.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tina. That's super.
That's it.
Yeah,
sorry.
That's it.
For ages.
I know, because we've got 2 minutes to wrap up, I'm afraid. And I hope everybody enjoyed the show. It was very detailed. Apologies if there was any triggering. We do have a triggering warning in the beginning. So thank you for joining us again. Thank you so much to our panel here. And also thank you to UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network. who are broadcasting to you on 105.3 FM out of Mississippi and along the Gulf Coast on 107.7 FM out of the city of New Orleans, Louisiana. Thank you as well to the owner of UPRN, to Joe Montaldo, and of course our station manager, Michelle Desroches, who was in the chat today. Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much. Please stay tuned as to our upcoming next show with Joe Montaldo at 7 p.m. EST. I am your host, Beverli Rhodes, and please join me next Wednesday at 5 p.m. EST and 10 p.m. GMT live when we discuss, you've got it, another case of Rob Farrell, who is the leader of the vampire cult. So I'm going to keep all of the questions we didn't get to, guys, and we're going to go through them again next week, Wednesday, same place, same time. So wishing you a very blessed week. If you like the show, please like and subscribe. And everyone on the radio, come and join us next week. It was absolutely lovely. Thank you all.